Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Mark's NOTCAST, number 400 and something or other. 15th of April, 2025 today, bank holiday at the weekend. Woohoo, 4-day weekend. And I am doing yet another episode where I talk about a record from my collection that I like, love, or just own, actually. Just owning sometimes is good enough. And I am talking about a band that I used to love them, and I had to kill them, and now they're buried. I had to put them 6 feet under. No, I'm misquoting Guns N' Roses. It is goth rock super mega stars of old, The Mission, and their third and fourth studio records, Carved in Sound and Grains of Sand. And the reason that they are third and fourth is because they were both recorded at near enough the same time, in the same sessions, with the same lineup, and both came out in the same year. Now, there's a risk when you're in a band and you do two albums at the same time, is that the perception is that neither one of them is particularly good. And between the two of them, you could get one halfway decent album. And well, that's something for the Steve Hoffman forums to talk about, with Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 and Metallica's Load and Reload. Possibly the most popular question on internet forums for various heavy metal bands is, what would happen if I've got the perfect track list to put the two albums together? Well, that's not how it went down, and here is the real beef, so to speak. Also, I would like to thank one of my viewers for pointing out I have a protective case on my phone, which makes it look a bit hazy. So we're going to do a bit of science now. Look at that. That doesn't look quite so clear, does it? That's because there's a protective case over my phone to stop it from falling over and smashing. And then I've taken it off. So hopefully I'll appear sharper and in high definition. Although, of course, high definition isn't always a good thing. I have seen some Kevin Spacey films. I'm sorry about that, but nobody needs to see Kevin Spacey in high definition, not even Kevin Spacey himself, despite what he might think. So, 1989, it's the summer of 1989. I am but a mere slip of a lad. I'm 16. I turned 16 that summer. And I've got a lot of hair on my head. I know some of you can't believe it. No hair on my chin. And a voice that fluctuates between bassy and quite high. But remember that the bass and the treble don't make a rebel. Having Your Life Together does, according to the Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy, a greatly missed band. With that over, let's go into the album. So if you don't know who The Mission are, not seen them, heard of them or anything, a very good gothic rock band who I think were called goth when they shouldn't have been, really, because realistically and honestly, they probably wanted to be much closer to classic rock. You think about the influences that you have on a band form them. Well, The Mission wanted to be Led Zeppelin. They just wish that somebody hadn't invented Led Zeppelin first, and were fated by their label. With this album, Carved in Sand, their third studio record, they were judged to be a worldwide priority by their label, Phonogram, and given the opportunity to become absolutely mega super duper huge. Not going to lie, their career trajectory at this point could have gone one of two ways. The band could have been enormous, or the band could have floundered. And I'm afraid to say what happened next is for the next episode. But they were at a crossroads, and they could have gone one of two ways. There are two career paths. You think, could this have been their Joshua Tree, or would it have been perhaps something which would make them being Simple Minds, the band U2 could have been? Let's be blunt, Carved in Sand is not an amazing album. And there's lots of reasons why it isn't an amazing album, but it's nothing to do with the songs themselves. It's all to do with the songs that were chosen for the album, the order of the album and the sequence that it had. And let's be blunt, sometimes the band didn't put the best songs on the records. Halfway through the process, in the middle of 1990, they probably realised that, and then came out with Grains of Sand, the compilation companion, which was a half B-sides compilation and half new songs recorded at the same time. Between these two, you have one of the best rock albums of the 80s. Unfortunately, it was Butterfly on a Wheel, the first single, was released on the 1st of January 1990, so it doesn't matter how good it was for the 80s. This is the 90s, baby, and things change quite quickly. The band are on the cusp of greatness. They seem to be trained in the league and ready to jump from a Division 1 to a stadium band. They spent £1 million on recording the album. And could have been the next Led Zeppelin, could have been the next U2. That wasn't the path that they had. They had too many songs, and there was too much drug use, cocaine, LSD, lots of different drugs. And of course, as you all know, the band that plays together stays together. But when you've got different drugs in a band, the band starts to tear itself in different directions. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on your point of view, if you want to read the truly tawdry tale of the ins and outs, we have this book, Heady Days, The Mission Years, 1985 to 1990, written by Wayne Hussey, the band's vocalist, guitarist, and Uberführer. That details in sometimes painful detail the steps and missteps the band took on the way. This paperback edition is about £20. You will get £20 worth of it out of there. This version is signed by Wayne. Yours might not be. So there you go. And this really tells a story. I'm not going to lie. I took a lot of stuff out of this book to do this episode. The band's songwriting had fractured, really. And as with lots of bands, you have one guy that writes a lot of songs, and the rest of the people in the band kind of make those songs become songs by that band. And when you listen to people that they do solo albums, you can hear very distinctly the things that they bring to the band, and can go, that's what they bring to it. So I'm thinking about a band called Art Magic, which features Richard Oakes. Richard Oakes plays in Suede. You can listen to Art Magic and you can hear in Art Magic the things that he brings to Suede. And you can also hear in Suede the things he doesn't bring to Suede, the contributions that other people make. That's really fascinating to listen to solo albums and to be able to pick out the parts of the band that come from that person. And sometimes you can pick that and go, there's a particular individual that's made that band. Stephen Drozd, for example, who, when he joined the Flaming Lips, in my mind, the Flaming Lips suddenly became 10 times better. So, for example, I'm not really a Flaming Lips fan. I'm a Stephen Drozd fan. I'm not really an Oasis fan. I'm a Noel Gallagher fan, because of the stuff that Noel brings to the group is the thing that makes it special. And to me, the things that the Mission brought to the songs that Wayne wrote were the things that made those Mission songs. And when the band's lineup changed, you could hear the difference, which is pretty strange, really, because the guys go, well, I'm still writing the same songs I always was, but not necessarily the same way. So Wayne had about 20 songs that he was going to bring to the album. And between these two albums, managed to release about 20 songs, plus a couple of extras on some reissues that came out later on over time. The track listing for the album was decided by committee. There is a fascinating, albeit somewhat hands over your eyes, documentary called Waves Upon the Sand that was released on DVD here. And that's a 60-minute videomentary following the Mission as they write and record the album. And there are scenes when they're in the studio, they invite fans from local postcodes to come in and contribute their ideas about what the track listing for the album might be. And you see all these things on a chalkboard and stuff, kind of different alternate sequences and running orders. And it's fair to say, and it's clearly detailed in the liner notes for various reissues, the band don't think they ever quite got it right. It's a fascinating watch. It features live versions of a number of songs recorded in 1989 before the band finalised the album, some promo videos as well for things like Butterfly on a Wheel, Deliverance and so on, and live tracks as well as some studio recordings. It's a really interesting insight into what it is to make an album, but it's not necessarily going to give you the story of the record. There was a time when the band interrupted touring, or more correctly interrupted recording in 1989, broke out from Rack Studios to support The Cure at a number of festivals, played Reading, played what was called Highlands and Islands tour of small venues in Scotland to get themselves ready for the Reading Festival in 1989, and played a one-off show in Sheffield for their fan club. Parts of bits are included on here, and sometimes that breaks the band out from the regimented discipline of recording. But it also reminds you that a record should always be the sound of 4 people or 5 in a room looking in each other's eyes, making a racket. Luckily, there's plenty of that on this album, but it's not necessarily perhaps in places where you might think it's obvious. As the track listing was designed by committee, Wayne and probably other members of the band have come to the conclusion that it's quite a safe album. that it's quite conservative in some of its choices. That some of the songs were on there because they thought that's what people expected of the Mission and not what the Mission were really capable of. And that's a really interesting place to be, and I'll explore that more when we talk about the Mission's subsequent studio albums. Is a band's fan base puts a band in a box and says this is what that band does. They can't do anything else. That's what they do. And for the Mission, it was large, flowery, intricate, riffy, stadium rock with largely meaningless lyrics. When the band changed their approach and their direction, people went away from the group. Like, for example, if the Sisters of Mercy suddenly got a drummer, everyone would be like, what on earth is going on? Because the Sisters of Mercy are obviously 3 people and a drum machine. The Mission are 4 people. No drum machine there. But like a lot of things, the Mission are, and in this period in 1990, the Mish, Depeche, The Cure, Wonder Stuff, Needs Atomic Dustbin, Pop Will Eat Itself, they were the bands that I was listening to. And it's really strange because people have written those bands out of history, at least most of them. So Depeche Mode and The Cure still have a high profile. For some reason, the Stone Roses are still lauded as the second coming. But when people talk about the other bands from the time, Ned's Mission, Pop Will Eat Itself, The Wonder Stuff, Happy Mondays, it's kind of like a shrug of embarrassment and like, ooh, hasn't aged particularly well. And there is no hard and fast rule as to what makes a band age well and what doesn't. Just sometimes people look at it and go, wow, that looks kind of embarrassing. And it's weird because actually if you'd listened to Carved in Sand, you go, that's a classic rock LP. That is as good as Electric, some of the stuff by AC/DC. It's not cool. So people don't think of it. They're kind of like, oh, it's not Transvision Vamp or whatever, where it's much, much better than that. But the Mission were at a crossroads at this point. They could have become really big. And when you get that big, you never get it back. You lose that connection with who you are and where you came from is broken. And sometimes you never get that back. You lose touch with who you were. Or, as I think it's The Firm with Gary Oldman in, says, never forget where you came from or something. I can't remember now. It's been a long time since I've seen that film. I spent all this time and I haven't even talked about the first single. So the first single from the album is called Butterfly on a Wheel. And it was, by the way, one of the Mission's very few number ones. It got to number 1, but only in South Africa. Well, that's a surprise, isn't it? I bet that was one you didn't see coming. Butterfly on a Wheel is just a lovely, wonderful, great song that is, I think, unfairly maligned and not really listened to. Of course, it is very much the Mission's version of U2's With or Without You. And if you like With or Without You by U2, and if you like the Mission, you might go, yeah, but once you've seen it, it's one of those things where you can't unsee it, it's there forever. And this one was formatted to fuck with 4 versions. So there was a 10-inch in a box, there was a 12-inch, there was a CD single, and there was a 7-inch. I think there was a cassette as well. I don't really remember the cassette. But it is one of the best songs that the band ever did. It was inspired by a statement by Jacob Rees-Mogg's father when he was a judge, talking about sentencing for Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, something to do with the drugs bust in the 60s, where he described it as like breaking a butterfly on a wheel. A gross and disproportionate punishment that would inflict an unjust amount of pain and retribution for a relatively minor infraction. And that's it's a great place to start writing a song, isn't it? And the band considered asking Kate Bush if she'd do some backing vocals on it. But she actually said that it was perfect as it was. She couldn't better it, which is a very high statement from her. And it being number 1 in South Africa is quite a thing indeed. As I said, it closely follows the template of U2's With or Without You, on the grounds that it has probably the first verse and a half and the first chorus are all on a drum machine, while the band deliberately underplay very, very minimally, just a kind of like a lead guitar part, a rhythmic bass and a drum machine. And suddenly the drums come in towards the end of one of the choruses, and the whole song suddenly explodes, and there's all these sounds which have been held back. It's like listening to a jet engine when you hear the jet is just ready to take off and it starts to approach ramming speed. I think it's called V2, the point of no return, where you have to take off and the engines roar. If you've ever been in a plane, you'll know that moment where you're in a plane and suddenly the engines pitch up a bit and you go, yeah, we're not going back, we're really taking off now. That's where that song goes, where suddenly it goes to full speed. And it's a glorious thing to experience, and it's a lovely little rush when you see a band. It's also a thing that happens occasionally in Pixies and Nirvana songs. Chord change, key change, when you get to the chorus and the song suddenly takes off and you go, this is what it always could have been. It is a butterfly and not the worm. I didn't even know I was going to say that until I said it. Yikes. So yeah, Butterfly on a Wheel, fantastic track, love it to bits. As a single, can't remember what point it got to in the UK, probably number 6. It's back to the track called The Grip of Disease on the 7-inch. That appears on Grains of Sand. That's not a surprise. On the 12-inch, we have a magnificent octopus mix, 9.5 minutes of Butterfly on a Wheel that has new drum parts, extended sections, dropouts, old school classic 12-inch extended version. Oh, nice, came out at just the right size as well. And it's backed with The Grip of Disease and Kingdom Come, Forever and Again. If you watch my previous episode about the Mission's previous album called Children, Kingdom Come was mooted as the third and final single from the Children album, and it was on the album in a heavy rock orientated version, but the band had taken to playing it live in a piano arrangement, and that was the version that was used for the B-side here. Also on the CD single, which is the 7-inch mix of Butterfly on a Wheel, The Grip of Disease and Kingdom Come. And finally, the good old-fashioned 10-inch single in a box with an exclusive mixes of Butterfly on a Wheel and Kingdom Come and a commemorative live poster from Reading 1989. Let's have a look inside this 35-year-old bit of cardboard and see what there is. Sorry, I have a cold. It is not contagious. So you can watch this without getting a cold, by the way. So the 10-inch is here, and that has, I think it's called the Magnum Opus mix of Butterfly on a Wheel, which it does, and Forever and Again as well on there, the Kingdom Come. And then it has the Heavenly mix of Kingdom Come on the other side of the 10-inch. The Heavenly mix is the A-side of the 1988 12-inch promo of Kingdom Come that was meant to be the third single and thus the 12-inch mix. And here is, and this was an iconic image that you will see again and again and again, Wayne Hussey playing barefoot at the Reading Festival. This appears on some other kind of live albums and things, and is somebody somewhere undoubtedly had blue tacked that to their wall in 1999 and 1990. More on that later. I remember seeing it on a television show, actually, a show where Wayne Hussey met a superfan, which was very strange to watch, but of course not as strange as actually living it, I guess. Butterfly on a Wheel, top 10 UK, didn't get to number 1, did quite well, sold the album quite well. It worked well as a precursor to it. Now at that point, bands were releasing atypical singles. It's the first single from the album. So the first single from the album was always something like, we know we're going to sell a certain amount of copies. We're going to release something that's good, but not quite what people would expect from us in the past. So The Cure, for example, did that with Lullaby. Depeche Mode did it with Personal Jesus. The Mission did it with Butterfly on a Wheel. U2, I've mentioned them before, did it with a song called The Fly. A good song, but a song that people wouldn't necessarily expect to belong to that particular band. And it highlights the new direction the band are going in. And the new direction that the band are going in, of course, is Hubba Hubba Stadium Rock, which is here. And so this album is very, very good. It was the band's biggest selling one for a long period of time. It sold a lot of copies, but it tailed off pretty quickly. It's unlike some albums which sell and sell and sell for extended periods of time. Carved in Sand kind of sold a bit, and then it stopped selling. And the band didn't play any UK festivals in 1990. After the end of the UK tour on the 24th of March 1990 at the Birmingham NEC, it was November before the band played Britain again. And that was a long period of time, especially for a band that was at a weird interregnum stage where perhaps they were at the leap and they could have done with a couple of festivals, to be honest, in 1990. Maybe they should have headlined Glastonbury instead of the Happy Mondays. Apparently, Shaun Ryder was so fucked off his box at Glastonbury, he spent the whole show, or more correctly, the whole period at Glastonbury, in his bus smoking crack like a fucking moron. So maybe give that opportunity to somebody that actually deserves it, as opposed to this. And well, the Mission really, really, really wanted it. The album came out and it was very, very good. Side A is probably the best 5 songs. It's one of the best side A's of any side A that I've heard by any band ever, actually. And the first track on the album is called Amelia, which was a double A-side single towards the end of the album campaign. Amelia was a song that was written in response to a letter that Wayne had been sent by a fan of the band talking about how the fan was sexually abused by her father as a child. And it is the kind of song which people... I listened to it and I was like, wow, that is not mucking about. Daddy says, come and sit on my knee. You're the only girl for me. Send your daddy to hell. Those kind of things. They're the strong, strong lyrics. They're the kind of lyrics that had they been on a Nirvana album, everybody would be like, oh, amazing, talking about feminists, power and sexual abuse, etc. But because it was the Mission and they had, floppy laces and flowery shirts, and they weren't called Nirvana and they weren't from Aberdeen, people were like, oh, look, just bloody goths writing about trendy things. The genre was never taken seriously. And that is a real, real shame, actually, because there's a lot of gold in them Nar Hills, or a lot of goth in them Nar Hills as well. Amelia is a great song, and it's one that I try not to think about because it's like watching... It's like the oral equivalent of Requiem for a Dream or The Fountain. It's a song where you kind of go, it's great, but it's traumatic to hear. And if you've grown up in an abusive family environment, or a family environment where there wasn't, the correct amount of affection and emotion that was distributed around, you could easily think there are parallels. Just the abuse itself manifests in different ways. It manifests physically in the course of this song, as opposed to manifesting itself mentally, which is how it does in some other ways. The second song on the album was the third single to be released from it, and I am not gonna muck about. This has the worst lyrics of any Mission song ever. It's called Into the Blue, and the lyrics are absolutely atrocious fucking dog shit. To the point where, in the book, by the way, Wayne says, I was never asked about what a lyric was about, or nobody made any comments, which really somebody should have taken Wayne to one side and gone, are you sure? Because these are bad lyrics. And just so that you know what they are, the lyrics to Into the Blue, which are not published anywhere apart from on Genius.com, are mumbo jumbo. Listen to the whispers of madness. We have climbed mountains of dust. We have seen gold gather rust. Hocus pocus, the stampede of my heart. We have sailed on the stars through the air. We have flown on the wings of a prayer. Into the blue, only with you. Gasoline rainbows, swimming in puddles in the streets. Whichever way the wind blows, we've got the whole damn world crawling at our feet, laughing canyons and everglades, candle flames and razor blades, dancing through the poppy fields, hand in hand, we cascade into the blue. And then the worst verse in the history of mankind. There is a sinking dwarf on the streets of New York, not a 10-inch wall. I thought he was thinking there's a 10-inch wall on the streets of New York, which, given how ridiculous the lyrics to this song are not implausible and actually frighteningly possible. There's a singing dwarf on the streets of New York. There's a shuffling man with plastic on his head, a preacher woman crying in the traffic, crying for the living and crying for the dead. The waste of it all. And there's more at stake than we could ever know. Because when we're together, we always fall into the blue. What the fuck is that song about? Absolutely nothing. Those lyrics are atrocious. They are idiotic, possibly up there with Two Unlimited's No Limits for an incisive insight into mankind. And that's one of the reasons why I never loved the Mission. And I'm Facebook friends with people that have been in the band, and Facebook friends with lots of people that love the band. But the lyrics to Into the Blue, they are awful, aren't they? They are really bad, and they just don't work. And if you wanted a reason to criticise the band, those lyrics are very apt to go, what are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to say? You've got a platform, you've got an ability to speak to hundreds of thousands of people. you can't spend 10 minutes looking at them and going, what do I want to communicate about the human condition at this point? I want to talk about a singing dwarf on the streets of New York and a shuffling man with plastic in his hair and a preacher woman crying in the traffic. And it's like, what's that about? Now, Into the Blue as a metaphor. If you want to be very, very charitable, you can say that's the colour of their lovers' eyes, and they are falling into the blue and drowning in an ocean of how beautiful their eyes are. Now, that took me that long to think of. If you're going to be singing those words for the next 35 years, spend a few minutes thinking about what you're going to be singing, and don't just put a bunch of it dip dog shit, the cat, lazy cat, brown fox jumped over the sleepy dog nonsense, because that's just not going to cut it. It just isn't. It's not good enough. And apparently the A&R man, Charlie Iyer, was aghast at how bad the lyrics to Into the Blue were. And Wayne, by his own confession, says that it's a drug song written on drugs about nothing very much. Well, that's great, but if you're going to be singing them for the rest of your life, try to make sure that you don't actually have the ground want to swallow you up when you're singing them. I know I'm a big lyrics guy. I'm pretty good at writing song lyrics. I would have given better lyrics for free, but I was only 16 and unknown and in Birmingham. So there you have it. So people go, yeah, armchair quarterbacking. Could you do better? Well, on the lyrics count, yes. On the guitar count, no, I couldn't. But we don't want to get to the point of thinking that only people that are capable and competent that can criticise. Because, we bring our things to these albums. We bring our memories, our interpretations, our own meanings to them, which is why sometimes songs have very different meanings to the audience than they do to the band. REM's The One I Love is one of the most misunderstood songs in the history of mankind. That lyric about a simple prop to occupy my time, that doesn't take a huge amount of time to work, and all you really need to do is to just woefully miss the point of the song, and then suddenly it becomes a really nice, lovely love song, as opposed to a song about the toxic nature of constantly searching for a new partner, or perhaps burning through partners because you yourself are not particularly pleasant. That refrain in The One I Love, the one about fire, for example, and you kind of go, that could be love that burns down everything because love is a flame. Again, I'm thinking all these things, and it is not difficult to think them. So why not write decent lyrics? Track 3, now that I've written myself into an apoplexy of rage, is A Butterfly on a Wheel, which is a much, much better song. Absolutely perfect. Probably my favourite Mission song, actually, comes to think of it. And there are quite a few really very, very good ones. And deservedly a big, big hit. We have track 4, which is Sea of Love. Now, Sea of Love is very good. The sitar on it is influenced by the Beatles. That in itself is not a surprise. And when you go through the open through the inner sleeve, that looks especially like the outer sleeve, by the way, to Grains of Sand. And you have like the runes here. You can see the Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. There's the 4 little runes here, like the 4 little signs that Led Zeppelin have, and then there's this inner sleeve which kind of also goes, well, there's Wayne and Craig, I guess, and Simon and Mick there, which matches up with them. And by the way, these inner sleeves were cheap. They were not made to be poured over 35 years later. They were made to be sold. So I'm going to have to put a plastic inner sleeve on that at some point. And Carved in Sand, then therefore, Sea of Love does have, I believe, extra guitars by Reeves Gabrels on it. I could be wrong there, but I think that's what happened, is that Reeves plays on it, and he was in Tin Machine, David Bowie's band, who I think were recording near where the Mission were recording this, and both were produced by Tim Palmer, by the way. So he came in and guested on that before he then became a member of David Bowie's band as a solo artist, and then became a member of The Cure, and is playing with The Cure to this day. And I think he's a fantastic guitarist who's underrated. And if you want to disagree with me, that's fine too. That's entirely up to you. But Sea of Love is influenced by the Beatles. It's clearly got lots of George Harrison's sitar on it. and it's quite good. It doesn't necessarily communicate anything very much, apart from that intoxicating sense of having met somebody, and that sense of where you've met somebody and you kind of think there's a communal kind of common spirit there, and that's quite an intoxicating feeling. And you have to be careful that it's not just pheromones and hormones and things like that. Although, you know, technically, I think, what is it? Dopamine and serotonin are the only things that you actually enjoy, by the way. I could be wrong there, but I think those are the two chemicals, technically the only things that you enjoy, you know, and love hormones are just part of that as well. Right, where was I going? Yeah, next track, man, after Sea of Love. And by the way, a demo of Sea of Love is on the 2008 double disc version of Carved in Sand. And I'm going to get to this later on. But it does have demos of Hands Across the Ocean, which was recorded with Andy Partridge from XTC, Divided We Fall, Sea of Love, Hungry as the Hunter, Bird of Passage, Butterfly on a Wheel, Hands Across the Ocean, a White Elephant mix, and some other tracks as well. So that one's well worth picking up if you get a chance to do it. Then we're on to probably my second favourite Mission song, track 5, side 1, the second single released from the album. It is the magnificent, incomparable, utterly nonsensical Deliverance. Deliverance is a song about the King Arthur legend, with nothing to write about history. Iron Maiden do this, of course, and everything I learned about history, I learned from Iron Maiden. Everything I learned about King Arthurian mythology, I learned from Excalibur and the Mission's Deliverance, about the Lady of the Lake, and etc., etc. It's a song about nothing, and that's apparently what it says in the it's a song about nothing, and sometimes songs are just about nothing, and that is one of the things that this song does. It was released on a 7-inch, a cassette, a CD single, a 12-inch, another 12-inch, and a 10-inch, of which I've got half the formats, but I've got all of the tracks that were released on there. So this 10-inch features Deliverance, which is a slightly different recording. It's got a different introduction, which is, in my opinion, superior. And then Heaven Sends You, one of the most expensive B-sides ever recorded, and Mr. Pleasant. Mr. Pleasant is a cover, by the way, of The Kinks, which was played live. The 10-inch, let's have a look at what it says. Deliverance 1990 tour booklet and a 4-track 10-inch. The extra track on there is Virginia Plain by the Metal Gurus, which is the members of the Mission performing glam rock covers, and I'll get to them later. So this is a photo of the band during a sound check. That's clearly not Simon Hinkler there on guitar. And then there's a booklet with some explanatory text that's in there, that's stapled into it. Some photos of the band members in the days when photos of band members counted for something. More photos of band members, more explanatory text, and a photograph which will later reappear on the cover of a live album, which you'll be seeing a bit more of. This features the Deliverance 1990 tour details. So that is the band playing places like the Royal Court Theatre in Liverpool, up to the Birmingham NEC, and then Utrecht, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Hamburg, Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, Munich, Milan, Rome, Lyon, and the Zenith in Paris. The band were a fierce live proposition at this point, better live than on records, and I think that they were underrated because the lyrics to some of the songs were not amazing, and they were underrated because they just weren't cool. And that is a great shame, actually, because cool is one thing, good is another, and we can all think of cool bands that are objectively absolutely dogshit terrible, and I'm not going to mention any names because your opinion and your mileage may vary. Deliverance had a limited edition picture disc CD. This was to go into a box set of CD singles with picture discs on, and this features the 7-inch mix of Deliverance and the 12-inch LP version with a different intro, and also Mr. Pleasant and Heaven Send You, the 12-inch. So 12 inches were formatted to fuck. There's a 12-inch with a 12-inch mix, the Sorcerer's remix of Deliverance on. It's also backed with an extra 4 live tracks by the Metal Gurus, which are Blockbuster, Metal Guru, and Mama We're All Crazy Now by Slade. Incidentally, Slade was number one the day of my birth. So in case anybody asks, what was number one the day of your birth? Well, for me, it was Slade. So that's not so bad, is it? And the Sorcerer's Mix here on the 12-inch of Deliverance. One features additional re-recordings and overdubs. It features samples from Eraserhead, and it samples Kate Bush from The Sensual World when she was going, "Ooh yes, ooh yes, ooh yes, give it to me." So that yes, but it was sampled secretly by Kate Bush, and I think they stuck some filters on it to make it not quite so obvious. That's where it was stolen from. We also had, another poster in case your walls needed yet more posters of the mission. There's another poster of the mission in case you've forgotten what they've looked like since they last released a single 6 weeks ago. And then that all goes inside this weird thing. Now, at this point, singles were expensive. They were expensive to make. They were not expensive to buy. This was about 99p for me. The idea was that you get your first week chart position. You buy your chart position by formatting the songs to the moon and back. By putting out, 6 12-inches or 3 12-inches and a cassette single and a 7-inch and a 10-inch and a CD single, and people like me but with more money would buy all versions of it, and then that version would get into the charts, and because it sold 6 copies instead of 2 copies or 1 copy, it would sneak up the charts a little bit. It would do a little bit better. It would be in the top 10, and people would go, right, so I've got to go and book them for a festival, or put them on the James Whale show, put them on TV, those type of things. That's how it worked. They were gaming the system by multi-formatting singles at that point. And that stopped in, I think, 1995, when they reduced the number of singles that you could release, the number of formats, the number of mixes. And so people weren't necessarily able to buy chart positions by doing multi-formatted CD singles and 12 inches and all that type of stuff. Deliverance is a great track, by the way. The lyrics are nonsense. In fact, the lyrics on the album version are less worse, if that is humanly possible, than the live versions that the band were recording in 1989 and 1988, before the lyrics were finally written. And that will be on an upcoming live album later on in the episode as well. Flip the album over, woohoo, side 2, and we have Grapes of Wrath, which is available in an acoustic version upon Waves Upon the Sand. And Grapes of Wrath is Wayne describes it as a song that came through him rather than from him. It was an attempt to explore the kind of themes that you would have in something like Springsteen, maybe even Bon Jovi, writing about the dignity of labour and about Johnny used to work on the docks, and it's tough. Oh boy, it's tough. And surely we're 3/4 of the way there, we're living on a prayer. It has some instrumentation from Guy Chambers, who was formerly of the Waterboys, then of World Party, and I think he then went on to be Robbie Williams' co-writer for a period of time. There is a demo that is on the expanded version of Carved in Sand that was released in 2008. It's thoroughly okay, I guess, is the way to put it, and I quite like it. And then we have the last truly amazing track on the album. Track 7 is Belief, played live very frequently on the 1988 tour. It is a 7-minute epic about religion, deception, and huge, enormous riffs. I think Belief is just a fantastic song. I love them playing it live. It's slow, it's pacey, it's just downright bloody brilliant. And there's an LP mix on it. There's also, on this CD, The Mission Anthology, there is a demo, a Mike Fraser version, previously unreleased. This also features demos of Grapes of Wrath, the demo, and versions of Hands Across the Ocean and a track called Diamond Cuts Diamond, both produced by Tim Palmer during the sessions for Carved in Sand that were not released at all. Belief is a phenomenally good track. I've seen the band play it live. Pretty much every gig I've seen them play, and it always just works. It comes out of the traps, and it is, put technically, this is not a technical term, a banger. Moving on from that, we have Paradise Will Shine Like the Moon. Paradise Will Shine Like the Moon is, according to Wayne, these two shouldn't have made the album at all. Talking about this and Hungry as the Hunter, by the way. And Hungry as the Hunter has also Reeves Gabrels adding guitar in it. These two songs are not great. Paradise is a song about nothing, and it is that, well, lyrically it's not about anything. Musically it's quite good, but lyrically it's not about anything, and I don't think Wayne thinks they should have been on the album, and I agree with him. There are much, much better songs to have put on the album, as well as Hungry as the Hunter, which works quite well live, but I've not seen it played very often, and I think the lyrics are not really great either. The last song on the album is Lovely, and Lovely is lovely. A lyric about I believe in sunshine, and I believe in cats, and I believe in me, and I believe in you, and I believe in love. It's just this lovely little song, which is massively underrated in the band's body of work. Enormously underrated, but it's slight and it's silly and it's not entirely serious, and it's at the same point 100% sincere around it. And that is the Mission's Carved in Satin, their third studio album. Here is the original 1 CD version of it that was released in 1990. As is customary with the release of a studio album, there are both interview discs and tours. This is the Words Upon the Sand interview disc that goes with the album, and this came in a really unusual and unique kind of flip-top sleeve thing, which I never really understood exactly how that worked. Is that you kind of lift this up, and this comes out, but it only comes out part of the way, and it kind of tilts the disc out at the same time. And well, that was a short-lived pack. I guess it was called, let me think, a CD 2001 by Shape 2001 CD format. And I don't know who designed this, but whoever it is deserves both an award and to be cursed from the heavens forever for designing the most ridiculously impractical CD sleeve I have ever seen. The CD box completely. As I said, the second single was called Deliverance, and that was backed up with a theatre and arena tour in the UK, with the band as a four-piece, aided by Wolfie on guitar, who I think was in Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, to help the band, to help Wayne be more visual in his presence, so that he could roam the stage a bit more and he wasn't stuck playing guitar during certain parts of certain songs. Those shows were magnificent, but difficult, and they resulted in the recording of a performance at the Manchester Apollo on the 15th of March 1990, most of which formed the basis for the band's first official live album, No Snow, No Show for the Eskimo. You'll recognise that photo from Reading 1989, and this is a BBC compilation album. I think you could get paid a few £1,000s by the BBC to license a live album. And I know New Order did that in 1992. They got £5,000 for BBC Live in Concert. The Mission probably went, well, we'll just stick out a live album, and that will remind people of who we are and how good we are, as a kind of official bootleg compiled from two shows. One at Wembley Arena in 1988, and the Wembley Arena show features Serpent's Kiss, Belief, an early version of Belief, Severina, The Kingdom Come, an early version of Deliverance, and Tower of Strength and Crystal Ocean. And tracks recorded at the Manchester Apollo are Amelia, Wasteland, Butterfly on a Wheel, and Into the Blue. It's a fantastic live album. It's a snapshot of a time when the band were playing magnificent shows, but not perhaps their best. And sorry about the sniffing. I can't help it. I've got a cold like many other people. The Manchester show and the Wembley show later appeared on 2008's Live at the BBC box set. And Live at the BBC box set, despite some frustratingly incoherent sequencing, gigs are cut up between two CDs and separated by eras, features radio sessions. So radio sessions recorded for, I believe, the Richard Skinner show. So piano versions of Butterfly on a Wheel and Burning of a Passage, which also appear on this, Salad Days, the Mission's 1990, I think it's 1994 BBC Sessions album, as well as the live recording of most of the Manchester Apollo show. It does not feature duplication. For example, CD3, and let me just quickly check here, most of it was recorded at Manchester. So there's Amelia, Wasteland, Serpent's Kiss, Into the Blue, Severina, Butterfly on a Wheel, Sea of Love, and Kingdom Come, recorded at Manchester, which means that actually if you wanted some of the other songs recorded at Manchester, so for example Amelia and Wasteland are on here, Into the Blue and Butterfly on a Wheel are on here, but if you wanted all of the songs from Wembley, you had to own this as well as this, because some of the songs from Wembley are only on here and some of the songs from Wembley are only on here, which is frustrating, but so be it. And the Manchester set I recorded off the radio on a massive stereo deck that belonged to my dad. And I was like, this is incredible, and I want to be seeing that band more often. Well, I made up for lost time over time. But at this point, the Mission were following the traditional route, bands like Springsteen and so on, of just being amazing live, and that was how they were selling copies. And that's how they were gaining their reputation, by being just great on stage. Simon left the group on the 23rd of April, 1990. And I don't really want to gossip around the reasons why. That was clearly a difference of personalities. But the band were never the same. Every band has a moment where they start to feel like they're no longer on the ascent or the top of the mountain. And I think Simon's departure from the group, to the people from the outside, signified that this wasn't going to be a band that was going to have the same lineup forever, like U2 or REM or Depeche Mode, or some bands like that, or Led Zeppelin. Well, all right, maybe I'm making a couple of slight leaps with Depeche Mode. Most people, Depeche Mode's lineup was very stable. REM's lineup was very stable. U2's, Queen's, those were very, very stable lineups. The Mission looked like they were going to be the same four guys, and then suddenly it wasn't. Somebody had left, something was fractured, something had broken. And that was, I think, where the first cracks in terms of the public perception of the band had been. Not, despite what you might think from reading this, Wayne's drunken appearance on the James Whale show, where he started to throw shoes at the camera. That was where I think perhaps there was a sense that the Mission were fallible and were starting to not be on the ascent anymore. And of course, this wasn't necessarily combated by the band playing the UK again or anything like that. It was several months. It was, I think, 7 months after Simon left before the band played the UK again, and they had to rebuild themselves. So Wolfie, who had been playing additional guitar and keyboards, kind of moved over into the main role for a period of time. Tim Braccino, who was in All About Even, had left, kind of moved into the post for a period of time as well. And the band kind of carried on, really. This is a period that's kind of detailed probably most accurately in this release. The relatively recent Live at Hollywood Palladium 1990 fan club release that was packaged with a fanzine, and this features about 15 tracks, the whole show recorded live at the Hollywood Palladium on the 11th of May 1990. The then embryonic, struggling lineup of the band, featuring, and let me just quickly check here, it was originally produced in a cassette for the Mission World Information Service, and the CD version was remastered by Wayne, and was sent with copies of the Tazeus, which I've never been able to pronounce, Mission fanzine from July 2022. I don't think you can get this anymore, so you might just have to look for a copy of it from somewhere else. But it is a fabulous live album of the bands. And were the Mission given the same amount of commercial respect that certain other bands were, this would have been undoubtedly a shoe-in for a live disc on a multi-disc box set. The material itself that would have comprised that multi-disc box set has all been released. It's just been, packaged out as extra tracks on compilations, best-ofs and B-sides, as opposed to a super mega massive carved-in sand multi-disc set. You'd have had 3 shows from that period. So Manchester was on the radio, Kilburn was on Channel 4, Hollywood was the fan club's cassette and CD, Dusseldorf was on Rock Palast German television, and that later got released, as well as a European festival appearance. So the band was visible, very definitely visible. But there was this sense that things had started to go a little bit wrong. Still, business as usual, 3rd single, Into the Blue. And Into the Blue is backed with Divided We Fall and Bird of Passage. Bird of Passage having been played on the radio, and Divided We Fall having been quite good and a close run contender to be in the album. There was, of course, a remix 12-inch. This features that lovely thing here on the inside, and it also features a First Avenue mix and a live version of Child's Play and a band poster. The First Avenue mix still isn't on CD that I can recall, and even though he had left the group at this point, there was a poster of the band, just in case you've forgotten what the band looked like since the last time they released a single a few months ago there. And I remember seeing that on the wall of somebody's house, watching a Meet the Fans kind of episode of a Channel 4 rock show, where Wayne went into a room that was clearly a shrine to him and his band, and felt somewhat awkward and very, very self-conscious. And that was fascinating television. It's not quite up there with the Cock Piss Partridge episode of Alan Partridge, but it certainly felt like it was the indie goth rock equivalent thereof. The band released a fourth single after that, and the fourth single was Hands Across the Ocean, a previously unreleased song from the sessions for the album that was then going to precursor the next Mission studio record. Hands Across the Ocean is a classic, lovely song. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely rate it to put technically itty bitty bits, I think. And it's backed with a live version of Amelia recorded at the Hollywood Palladium, and remixes of Tower of Strength and a track called Mercenary from the upcoming studio album. So the band went into the studio after Simon had left, recorded some extra songs, remixed some extra songs that hadn't previously been released, and were then planning to release their second album. The CD single of Hands Across the Ocean is backed with a demo of Stay With Me with a drum machine before Mick had joined the group. Quite interesting. And then that gave us the fourth studio album, Grains of Sand, which was released in a multitude of formats. And somewhere I have the original CD of Grains of Sand as well. So this features all the songs that were recorded from the time that didn't make it onto the album. So that's Hands Across the Ocean, which was remixed and had a new vocal on it. The Grip of Disease, which was from the B-side of Butterfly on a Wheel. Divided We Fall from Into the Blue. Mercenary, which was a new song and was written about the defection of members of the band's road crew to become part of the Sisters of Mercy's road crew, because the Sisters of Mercy had gone back on tour for the first time. And Mr. Pleasant, the cover version of the Kinks. Side B has Kingdom Come and Heaven Sends You. Sweet Smile of a Mystery, a previously unreleased song. It is, I think, the most expensive B-side ever recorded, because they had brought an orchestra in and then decided to put it on the B-side, and that cost £60,000, I think, that song, which is ridiculous. And that was orchestration again by Guy Chambers. And then a cover version of John Lennon's Love, Bird of Passage, which was from the B-side of Into the Blue. And then on the CD and the cassette, I think there was versions like, country and western hoedown versions of Tower of Strength and Butterfly on a Wheel. But that wasn't all. The Mission was still touring, and they released a single, a Christmas single, under the name of the Metal Gurus, produced by Noddy Holder of Slade. Wayne, Simon was back in the band for a few days, Craig and Mick doing glam rock cover versions of Merry Christmas Everybody. And this was inspired by the fact that they'd supported the Wonder Stuff in December 1989, doing glam rock covers of tracks like Do You Want to Touch Me and Merry Christmas Everybody, Ballroom Blitz, Get It On, Virginia Plain, Mama We're All Crazy Now, Blockbuster, songs that appeared on other 12 inches, like for example this one of Deliverance, and released in a limited edition mail order VHS tape of the Metal Gurus Absolutely Live, of which this 12-inch is the soundtrack to it. Merry Christmas Everybody is just ridiculous. It's silly, it's fun, it's completely meaningless, and I enjoy it for what it is, which is it's a silly song and a silly 12-inch. But it also showed that the Mission were not above mocking themselves. There was one final release from this period, and it came out relatively recently, 2018. It is The Mission Live at Rock Palast, and that features 3 discs on it. So it features the band recorded live at Dusseldorf Phillips Hall on the 24th of November 1990, and again in Dusseldorf in 1995, a later lineup of the band. So this DVD is actually probably one of the best live mission films that you can get, capturing the band right at the peak of the Carved in Sand era. And that features 14 songs, about an hour and 15 minutes of the band playing live there. And it's great. I really enjoy it. It is, unfortunately, because the multi-tracks have been lost, was unable to be remixed. And that meant that the live mixes on the night were the ones which were broadcast. But that said, it is a fine live set from the group, and I really, really love it. But overall, Carved in Sand and Grains of Sand, this is the mission at their best and their worst. The album is unfocused. Side 2 tails off into nothingness. It is poorly sequenced, and the band themselves, Wayne says that they tried to recover that with Grains of Sand, but again, that felt a little bit like the band's Hatful of Hollow, a little bit like the band's B-sides compilation, because, well, that's what it was. And with the fracture of the lineup, I think the perception outside of the group was that it was the beginning of the end, which is harsh, actually, because I think that there's lots of good stuff to come in the band's discography. But if you want to think about, well, how good were the mission at that point in time, personally, I'd recommend watch this if you can. It's on YouTube, and I'm going to post a link to it underneath the episode. But also, and most importantly, like all the things I talk about, if it doesn't mean anything to you, don't spend any time with it. Don't listen to it. Life is too short for bad music, bad people, bad haircuts. I haven't got one at all now as a result. So, just make the most of what it is and enjoy it for what it is, or maybe, perhaps, if you want to put it another way, what it isn't. This was a fun time to be a fan of the band. The shows were great. The records, not so much so. And I saw the band, well, I had tickets to see the band twice. Once they cancelled because of snow on this tour, but I also got made up for it many, many times since. And I hope that you like them as much as I like them. The lyrics may be rubbish. The music is most definitely not. And aside from Into the Blue, everything is passable on here. It's just perhaps sometimes there are better lyrics to have been written. But unless Leonard Cohen has written them, there are always better lyrics to be written across the face of the world, aren't there? So perhaps sometimes you have to think about what we do have rather than what we don't. And with that, I'm going to wrap up talking about the mission for an hour. I couldn't believe I could talk about the mission for that long, but I've done it. And take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful. And see you all soon. Be excellent to each other. And I've run out of things to say. I've literally got nothing else to say. So, take care of yourself. See you soon. Okay, bye. Oh, where's the off button? There it is. Sad trombone.